Hi, and welcome to the first episode of an interview in history. This interview takes place in 1909. In this episode, we'll be talking with Mark Twain, which was the pen name of Samuel Clemens, one of America's most iconic writers. Born in Missouri, Mark Twain started working as a typesetter and printer early in life, before embarking on travels up and down the Mississippi River as a steamboat pilot apprentice. This river lifestyle inspired many of Mark Twain's early writings, especially his pen name, which refers to measuring depths on the river. His greatest works include The Adventures of Tom Sawyer, The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn, and The Gilded Age. Known for his sharp humor and satire of American life, Mark Twain captured regional dialects and landscapes like no other writer. Though many of his works highlighted the social and racial injustices of the time period, he remains one of the most widely taught classic American authors. With over 20 novels and short story collections, Mark Twain left an enduring stamp on literature, culture, and education around the world. I'm very excited to welcome you, Mr. Twain. Maybe I should ask which you would prefer to go by, Mr. Twain or Mr. Clemens?
Whichever you feel you'd enjoy more. I have to tell you, though, I consider introductions unnecessary, but as it is the custom to have them, I normally prefer doing the act myself, so as I can rely on getting in all the facts. However, scarcely in my lifetime had I ever heard an introduction that was so beautifully phrased, or so well deserved.
Hey, thanks. And I meant every word of it. So, may I ask you some questions that bring out the important parts of your public and private life?
I have a very bad memory.
That's no problem. Just do the best you can.
I will. I'll put my whole mind to it.
Great. Now, are you ready to begin?
Ready.
How old are you?
19 in June.
Well, I would have thought you to be much older than that.
Thank you very much.
Now, we know you were born in Missouri, but when did you first begin to write?
In 1836.
Well, how could that be if you're only 19 now?
I don't know. That does strike you as curious somehow, doesn't it?
Yes, it does. So then, who do you consider the most remarkable man you've ever met?
Thomas Jefferson.
Thomas Jefferson? But you could have never met Thomas Jefferson if you're only 19 years.
Now, if you know more about me than I do, why do you bother to ask?
Well, I was just thinking. Never mind. How did you happen to meet Mr. Jefferson?
I happened to be at his funeral one day, and he asked me to make less noise.
What? If you were at his funeral, he must have been dead. And if he was dead, how could he care whether you made noise or not?
Oh, he was a particular kind of man in that way.
Okay, let me get this straight. You say he spoke to you, and yet he was dead.
I didn't say he was dead.
But wasn't he?
Some say he was. Some say he wasn't.
Well, what did you think?
It was none of my business. It wasn't my funeral.
Okay. Let's move on to something else. Have you any brothers or sisters?
I think so, yes, but I don't remember.
Wow, that's the craziest thing I've ever heard. I'm sure you had a brother. Haven't I read that somewhere?
Oh, yes, now that you mention it, there was a brother. William. Bill, we called him. Poor old Bill.
Why, is he dead?
Never could tell. There was a great mystery about that, you see.
Oh, that's sad. He disappeared then?
Well, yes, in a sort of general way. We buried him.
Buried him? Without knowing whether he was dead or not?
Oh, no, he was dead enough, all right. You see, we were twins, defunct and I, and we got mixed up in the bathtub when we were only 2 weeks old, and one of us was drowned. But we didn't know which. Some think it was Bill, some think it was me.
Well, what did you think?
I would give worlds to know. This solemn, awful mystery has cast gloom over my whole life. But I'll tell you a secret which I've never revealed to anyone before. One of us had a peculiar mark, a large mole on the back of his hand. That was me. That was the child that drowned. Okay, clearly you've been messing with me. And I completely understand why you're one of America's greatest humorists. But I think we should move on to another topic. We've talked about your brother Bill. Did you have any other siblings? Yes, there were 6 of us. 2 of my siblings died young from disease, and I was born 2 months premature. My mother was very protective of me. Well, that's very sad. How about your parents then? I asked my mother, Jane Clemens, when she was in her 80s, about my poor health as a child, and if she was uneasy about me, and she replied, "Yes, the whole time." And I asked if she was afraid I wouldn't live. "No," she said, "afraid you would." So where did you get your sense of humor, your mother or your father? It could be said that I've inherited my sense of humor from my mother, not my father. John Clemens, by all reports, was a serious man who seldom demonstrated affection. You know, when I was 14, my father was so stupid I could scarcely stand to have the old man around. But by the time I was 21, I was amazed by what he'd learned in just 7 years. I know that feeling. So then, are any of your stories tied to your real life? Many of those adventures that I wrote about could be reenacted with my friends as well. My friends and I did play at being pirates, Robin Hood, and other fabled adventurers. Among my friends was Tom Blankenship, an affable but impoverished boy whom I later identified as the model for the character Huckleberry Finn. There were local diversions as well, fishing, picnicking, and swimming. A boy might swim or canoe too, and explore Glassocks Island in the middle of the Mississippi River. Or he might visit the labyrinth McDowell's Cave, about 2 miles south of town. That first site became Jackson's Island in the adventures of Huckleberry Finn. The second became McDougal's Cave in the adventures of Tom Sawyer. As a boy in the summers, I visited my Uncle John Quarles' farm near Florida, Missouri, where I played with my cousins and listened to stories told by the slave Uncle Daniel, who served, in part, as a model for Jim in Huckleberry Finn. Wow, that's fantastic. Let me ask you, do you ever intend to write an autobiography? If I do, it will be as other men have done, with the most earnest desire to make myself out to be the better man in every little business. It's not human nature to write the truth about itself. Nonetheless, the reader gets a general impression from an autobiography whether the man is a fraud or a good man. The reader can't give his reasons any more than a man can explain why a woman struck him as being lovely when he doesn't remember her hair, eyes, teeth, or figure. And the impression that the reader gets is a correct one. I did an experiment once. I got a friend of mine, a man painfully given to truth on all occasions, a man who wouldn't dream of telling a lie, and I made him write his autobiography for his own amusement and mine. He did it. The manuscript would have made an octavo volume, but, good honest man that he was, in every single detail of his life that I knew about, he turned out to be, on paper, a formidable liar. He couldn't help himself. It's just not human to write the truth about itself. So doesn't it bother your conscience not telling the truth? Your conscience is a nuisance. A conscience is like a child. If you pet it and play with it and let it have everything at once, it becomes spoiled and intrudes on all your amusements and most of your griefs. Treat your conscience as you would treat anything else. When it's rebellious, spank it. Be severe with it. Prevent it from coming to play with you at all hours. And you will secure a good conscience. That is to say, a properly trained one. A spoiled one simply destroys all the pleasure in life. I think I've reduced mine to order. At least I haven't heard from it in some time. Perhaps I have killed it from over-severity. It's wrong to kill a child, but in spite of all I have said, a conscience differs from a child in many ways. Perhaps it's best when it's dead. Got it. Do you have time for one more question? Please. You seem to have an interesting view on humanity. Can you explain that? Well, it's a comical invention, the human race. Any way you look at it. But sometimes it seems a shame that Noah and his party did not miss the boat. I've always wondered if God invented man because he was disappointed in the monkey. Well, now it's time to go. I came in with Halley's Comet in 1835. It's coming again next year, and I expect to go out with it. It would be a great disappointment in my life if I don't. The Almighty has said, no doubt, now here are these two unaccountable freaks. They came in together. They must go out together. Well, I have to say, this has certainly been an interesting interview, Mr. Twain, and I want to thank you for taking the time to be with us. Samuel Longhorn Clemens passed away on April 21st, 1910, with the appearance of Halley's Comet. So please join us next week when we talk with the 16th President of the United States, Abraham Lincoln. Thank you for joining us, and until next week, take care.